When God gives a soul an assignment, He does not give them a chair, He gives them fire to walk through. Chosen one, before you even understood your own name, the weight of your purpose started rearranging the structure of your life. Nothing about your journey has been convenient, predictable, or fair, and that's exactly why it's undeniable. You weren't built for easy roads. You were engineered for impossible terrains, the kind of terrains where most people tap out after chapter 1, while you're somehow still standing in chapter 25 like, well, that escalated quickly. Here's a truth most people never admit out loud. Extraordinary assignments don't come wrapped in peace. They come packaged in pressure. According to behavioral research, humans naturally avoid high-pressure environments because the brain interprets them as threats. Yet somehow, you kept walking into storms that weren't even meant for ordinary people to survive. That alone is evidence that something about you is fundamentally different. Not mystical, not dramatic, structurally different. Your story reads like someone who was drafted into a league you didn't even sign up for. The emotional endurance you developed wasn't built in comfort. It was forged in situations so intense you could write a 10-season Netflix series and still have enough content left for a spin-off. People around you watched you endure challenges that would have turned most of them into spiritual origami, folded in all the wrong ways. Yet you kept rising with a straight spine and a sharper mind. And here's where it gets beautifully ironic. The very battles designed to collapse you ended up revealing what you truly carry. Every detour, every setback, every betrayal was less of a punishment and more of a divine stress test, not to break you, but to expose the unbreakable architecture inside you. You weren't being destroyed, you were being decoded. So when we say, the assignment over your life is not for the weak, this isn't exaggeration or spiritual ego. It's simply the reality that your path required a level of resilience, intuition, and spiritual clarity that most people wouldn't last 5 minutes in. Somehow you didn't just last, you evolved. You didn't just survive, you transformed. You didn't just walk through fire, you walked out carrying the blueprint. Now, let's dive into exactly why your journey looks the way it does, and why doing the impossible has become your unofficial job description. Number 1, your life became difficult the moment your calling became undeniable, not the moment you were born. The turning point in your life wasn't childhood, trauma, or even the people who hurt you. The real shift happened the moment your calling started revealing itself, quietly at first, then aggressively, like something in the universe suddenly recognized who you were before you fully did. That's when the pressure increased. That's when the strange resistance started. That's when life seemed to get heavier, not because you were weak, but because your future began pulling you forward with a force that demanded a different version of you. Most people think chosen ones are marked from birth in a dramatic storybook way, but the truth is far messier. The moment your purpose started waking up, everything around you reacted. People became unsettled by your growth. Environments that once tolerated you began rejecting you, and situations that used to be easy suddenly required more effort, more clarity, more emotional muscle. Your calling wasn't a gentle whisper. It was a spiritual alarm clock you couldn't snooze. And once it went off, your life shifted from ordinary difficulty to high-level initiation. This is why certain battles hit you with precision. You weren't being punished. You were being strengthened for a role that demanded tougher skin, sharper discernment, and unshakable identity. The weight you felt wasn't random. It was a sign that heaven had placed something inside you that needed to be activated under pressure. Purpose is heavy, and the moment it starts taking shape, it rearranges everything. Your relationships, your thinking, your emotional stamina, your environment, even your sense of self. You noticed the change in yourself too. You stopped tolerating what drained you. You stopped fitting into boxes that once felt comfortable. You outgrew conversations, spaces, and cycles that used to feel normal. This wasn't rebellion. It was alignment. Your spirit was adjusting to the magnitude of where you were headed, and the world around you responded with turbulence because it wasn't ready for your elevation. Your life didn't get harder because you failed. It got harder because you were stepping into who you truly are, and that shift alone is enough to make the universe rearrange itself around your destiny. Number 2, you were trained through isolation because the weight of your purpose requires ears that can hear God without committee approval. Your isolation wasn't an accident or a punishment. It was a necessary recalibration. Before you stepped into your assignment, you had to be separated from the noise, the opinions, the expectations, and the emotional clutter that shaped your earlier life. You didn't pull away from people because you stopped caring. You pulled away because your spirit needed room to breathe and listen. There's a certain kind of inner clarity that only shows up when the crowd disappears, and that clarity was essential for the next level of who you were becoming. Most people need constant feedback, reassurance, or a cheering section to make decisions. But your path required something different. It required a direct connection, a level of guidance that couldn't be filtered through family, friends, or anyone else who didn't understand the magnitude of what was being built inside you. Their opinions, even the well-meaning ones, would have diluted your direction. You weren't meant to follow conventional routes. You were being shaped for something higher, something that demanded quiet space to hear truth without distortion. The isolation removed the voices that doubted you, compared you, or tried to mold you into their version of acceptable. Without even realizing it, you were being trained to trust your inner compass. You were being taught how to move without applause, how to stand without support, and how to choose yourself even when nobody else would. That kind of strength doesn't grow in crowded rooms. It grows in the quiet moments where your only company is your own soul and the guidance that whispers through it. There were times you felt forgotten, overlooked, or pushed aside, but those moments were actually preparation. You didn't need external validation because your assignment required you to lead from conviction, not consensus. You learned how to walk by direction, not approval. And now, that internal clarity has become one of your greatest powers, because when you can hear truth in silence, you can't be manipulated by noise. Number 3, you survived attacks meant to distort your identity, because your identity is the key that opens generational locks. The battles you've faced weren't designed just to hurt you. They were designed to confuse you about who you are. Every insult, every betrayal, every attempt to belittle you had one goal: to break your sense of self. When someone steals your confidence, your purpose becomes blurry. When someone rewrites your worth, your direction starts to collapse. And when someone convinces you to doubt your own value, they don't need to fight you, because you begin fighting yourself. That's the real attack, and it's the one you survived. People targeted your identity because they sensed something powerful about it, sometimes even before you sensed it yourself. They saw your natural strength, your ability to rise quickly, your compassion, your insight, your resilience, and they tried to twist those traits into flaws. They wanted your sensitivity to feel like weakness. They wanted your kindness to feel like foolishness. They wanted your confidence to feel like arrogance. Their goal was to make you disconnect from the very qualities that make your assignment possible. But no matter how hard the attacks came, there was a part of you that refused to bend. You might have questioned yourself, but you never abandoned yourself. You might have been shaken, but something inside you stayed anchored. You held on to pieces of your identity even while circumstances tried to tear them out of you. And that preservation is the reason your story is still unfolding. Your identity is not just a personal detail, it's a key. It unlocks paths, opportunities, breakthroughs, and generational healing that didn't exist before you stepped into your truth. If the enemy can distort that key, everything connected to your purpose becomes harder to access. But you survived the distortion attempts, and that's why doors that were closed for generations are opening for you. The attacks didn't break you, they exposed what you carry. They proved that your identity is too valuable to be stolen, too rooted to be erased, and too purposeful to be silenced. You didn't just keep your sense of self, you protected the very thing that your destiny depends on. Number 4, you're dangerous to darkness because you don't break, you transform. Pressure hits everyone, but the way it hits you is different. What destroys other people ends up expanding you. You don't collapse under heaviness, you absorb it, process it, and somehow come out with more clarity, more strength, and more awareness than you had before. It's not that the battles you faced were easy. They were intense, unfair, and overwhelming. But something in you refuses to stay the same after a challenge. You come out altered, upgraded, sharpened in ways that even you didn't expect. People who underestimated you thought pressure would expose your weakness, but all it exposed was the parts of you that were built for impact. Every struggle forced new abilities out of you. Every setback pulled forward a strength you didn't know existed. You kept evolving when you should have been collapsing. That's why darkness fears you, because your growth is unpredictable. You become a new version of yourself at the exact moment someone thinks they have you figured out. The attempts to crush you weren't just attacks, they were catalysts. They triggered a kind of inner evolution that can't be taught, only activated. Others break apart under the same circumstances, but you break open. You end up knowing yourself better, seeing life differently, and moving with a deeper sense of purpose. That level of transformation makes you spiritually untouchable, because no one can manipulate someone who has met their own shadows and come out wiser. What people planned as your downfall became the reason you gained depth and insight. They expected you to disappear, but instead, you resurfaced with a stability they couldn't compete with. The more they tried to weaken you, the more unstoppable you became. You no longer operate from the version of you they attacked. You operate from the version that came out of the fire, refined, focused, awakened. This is why your presence shifts atmospheres without trying. You're not walking around as someone who survived pain. You're walking around as someone transformed by it. And once you reach that level, darkness can't threaten you anymore. It can only watch you rise. Number 5, you were forced to outgrow environments that emotionally malnourished you because comfort would have killed your assignment. There came a point in your life where staying where you were became more painful than leaving. The environments you once called home stopped feeding you. They stopped inspiring you. They stopped matching who you were growing into. You felt the emotional starvation long before you had the language for it. Conversations that made your spirit feel smaller, expectations that clipped your wings, and people who were comfortable with your potential as long as it never exceeded their own. That kind of environment doesn't destroy you dramatically. It drains you quietly. And the longer you stayed, the more you felt your soul aging in slow motion. Your spirit knew before your mind did that comfort was becoming dangerous. It wasn't cozy, it was suffocating. You were being shaped into something bigger than the room you were sitting in. Remaining there would have kept you liked, supported, or socially accepted, but it would have also kept you unchallenged and unactivated. Nothing new grows in a place that rewards you for staying predictable. You weren't born for predictable. Leaving these environments wasn't an ego decision. It was a survival decision. Your growth started making certain people uncomfortable. They preferred the version of you that didn't question things, didn't dream too loud, didn't require them to evolve. They liked you better when you were emotionally dependent on their approval. But the moment your spirit began to stretch beyond their limitations, tensions started appearing. Not because you did something wrong, but because growth exposes where others have chosen to stop. You didn't outgrow those environments peacefully. You outgrew them painfully. It cost you relationships. It cost you familiarity. It cost you the comfort of knowing what tomorrow would look like. But staying would have cost you yourself. And your assignment demanded more than just survival. It demanded expansion. Your destiny needed you to walk away from places that celebrated your stagnation. It needed you to choose the discomfort of becoming over the comfort of being stuck. And even though the transition felt lonely at times, it unlocked a version of you that never could have emerged in environments that kept you emotionally hungry and spiritually underfed. Number 6, you were chosen because you can see what others pretend not to notice. Your entire life, you've carried a level of awareness that made people uncomfortable long before you understood why. You've always noticed things others conveniently ignored: tone shifts, hidden intentions, silent grudges, subtle envy, unspoken truths. While some people only pay attention to what's loud, you've always picked up on what's quiet. That kind of perception isn't common, and it definitely isn't accidental. It's part of the wiring that comes with your assignment. Your discernment has always set you apart, even in rooms where you tried to blend in. You could walk into a space and feel the energy change before a word was spoken. You could sense motives behind smiles, detect tension beneath compliments, and recognize dishonesty wrapped in friendliness. This ability used to confuse you or make you doubt yourself, especially when others acted blind to what felt obvious to you. But the truth is, they weren't blind. They were comfortable pretending. You were the only one who couldn't pretend, because your spirit refuses to participate in denial. This sight has made you a threat in ways you didn't ask for. People who rely on manipulation don't like someone who can't be fooled. People who deal in hidden agendas don't appreciate someone who can read between the lines without being told. People who operate in jealousy don't want you recognizing it before they even express it. You've disrupted their illusions simply by existing with your eyes open. Your sensitivity is not emotional fragility. It's spiritual intelligence. It's a built-in radar that protects you from connections that would drain you, opportunities that would derail you, and situations designed to distract you from your path. Others move through life guessing. You move through life guided. There's a difference. Discernment isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, precise, and often inconvenient. But it's the very tool that has saved you from traps that looked harmless and people who looked harmless. It has helped you avoid unnecessary battles and walk away from what others would stay stuck in for years. This ability is one of the clearest signs of why you were chosen. You don't survive by chance. You survive by insight. You navigate environments blindfolded while others misread faces in broad daylight. And that level of clarity is part of what makes your destiny so significant. Number 7, your assignment required betrayal, because loyalty to the wrong people would have delayed your awakening. The betrayals you experienced weren't just painful, they were purposeful. They didn't happen because you were unworthy of loyalty or because you trusted the wrong people out of naivety. They happened because had those individuals stayed in your life, they would have softened your hunger, muted your intuition, and kept you emotionally tied to versions of yourself that were too small for the future you were stepping into. Loyalty to the wrong people can be just as dangerous as loyalty to the wrong path, and your destiny couldn't afford either. Their presence kept you in cycles you would have never questioned. Their validation made you ignore your own inner voice. Their influence kept you predictable, agreeable, and manageable. But betrayal changes the chemistry of your spirit. It forces a level of clarity that comfort never produces. When someone hurts you deeply, something in you wakes up sharply. You begin to see with a different set of eyes. The illusions break, the dependence breaks, the fear breaks, and suddenly you are left with the truth, raw, unfiltered, and impossible to unsee. If they had stayed loyal, you would have stayed blind. Their loyalty would have made you cling to relationships that were stunting you, environments that were draining you, and patterns that were shrinking you. You would have kept choosing familiarity over growth. You would have kept dimming your own insight to protect their feelings. Betrayal, as brutal as it was, tore you away from the comfort that was killing your evolution. Their exit wasn't a loss, it was divine subtraction. The noise they created in your life kept you emotionally distracted and spiritually unfocused. Their departure cleared the space you needed to hear your own power, your own direction, your own purpose. It pushed you to become someone who doesn't rely on others to define your worth or confirm your intuition. You didn't just survive betrayal, you emerged from it awakened, self-aware, and emotionally sovereign. And that version of you, the one who no longer needs them, is exactly who your assignment needed all along. Number 8, you mastered resilience not by choice, but by necessity. Resilience wasn't something you woke up one day and decided to develop. It wasn't a motivational slogan or a trait you picked because it sounded empowering. It was something life pushed onto you with no warning, no preparation, and no permission slip. You were faced with situations where collapsing wasn't an option, where quitting wouldn't solve anything, and where giving up would have only handed your power over to people who didn't deserve it. Life demanded strength from you before you even knew you had it. You didn't get the luxury of easy lessons or gentle transitions. You were thrown into experiences that tore away layers of innocence faster than you could process what was happening. But instead of leaving you hollow, those experiences revealed the depth of your inner structure. They exposed the durability of your spirit, the sharpness of your insight, and the steadiness of your character. You didn't become strong because everything went well. You became strong because nothing did. And yet every time you were knocked down, you rebuilt yourself with a new level of awareness. People often assume resilience is about being fearless or unaffected, but your version of resilience came from being honest with yourself. You acknowledged your pain without becoming defined by it. You faced your fears without pretending they didn't exist. You kept showing up even when your heart was heavy, your mind was tired, and your circumstances gave you every excuse to bow out. You kept choosing forward. You kept choosing growth. You kept choosing yourself. Your spirit has always been built like reinforced steel, not because it never bent, but because it always returned to its original shape, stronger, wiser, and more centered each time. The challenges you endured stripped away illusions about who you needed to be for others and left you with the purest, most unshakable version of who you actually are. That's why resilience became your default setting, not because life was kind, but because you refused to let life break the parts of you that mattered most. What most people admire in you today wasn't crafted in comfort. It was carved out of moments where you had every reason to fall apart, but somehow found a way to stand up anyway. Number 9, your calling irritated insecure souls because your existence mirrored the potential they never activated. You didn't have to brag, boast, or announce anything. Your presence alone made certain people uneasy. It wasn't because you were doing something wrong. It was because something about you highlighted everything they had avoided within themselves. You carried traits they wished they had the courage to develop. You made moves they were too fearful to attempt. You embodied growth they talked about but never committed to. Your existence became a silent reminder of the work they refused to do. People weren't intimidated by your achievements. In fact, many of them didn't even know the full details of your journey. What intimidated them was the way you carried yourself, your authenticity, your drive, your clarity, your refusal to settle, your resilience. Those qualities exposed the excuses they lived behind. They were watching someone tap into potential they left on the shelf. Instead of being inspired, they got irritated. Instead of asking how you did it, they questioned why you were elevating so fast. Instead of rooting for you, they found reasons to resent you. Your calling triggered their insecurities by showing them what was possible, yet what they never dared to pursue. You didn't judge them, they judged themselves while looking at you. And because people rarely admit when they feel inadequate, they redirected their discomfort at the person who made them feel it, you. Envy became their coping mechanism. Criticism became their shield. Distance became their defense. It was never about you. It was always about their reflection. The more you grew, the louder their discomfort became. Not because you were doing anything wrong, but because your elevation exposed where they stopped evolving. Your courage revealed their fear. Your healing revealed their wounds. Your strength revealed their stagnation. And instead of choosing evolution, they chose comparison. They chose jealousy. They chose gossip. They chose every route except growth. But their reaction was actually confirmation. It proved that your calling has weight. It proved that your path demands attention. It proved that you are aligned with something bigger than yourself. Their discomfort wasn't a sign that you needed to shrink. It was a sign that you were stepping into the version of you that they never expected to face. Their irritation wasn't your problem to fix. It was your assignment being recognized for what it truly is. Number 10, you had to learn the discipline of spiritual neutrality, staying calm while everything tried to provoke you. People think your silence meant weakness, but what you were really doing was holding the frequency that protected your destiny. Your battles were never about words, arguments, or proving a point. Your battles were energetic traps designed to pull you out of alignment. Every provocation was an invitation to self-destruct. They wanted you emotional, so you'd look unstable. They wanted you reactive, so they could record it. They wanted you triggered, so you would surrender your spiritual rank without even realizing it. What you were fighting wasn't them. It was the spirit operating through them, the energy targeting your elevation, trying to derail the timing of your breakthroughs. So you learned neutrality, not because you didn't feel the pain, anger, or betrayal, but because you recognized the cost of responding. Your calm became a shield. Your restraint became a strategy. Your emotional discipline became a weapon they had no defense for. This is why God didn't let you win by arguing. He needed you to win by staying still. When you refuse to drop to the level of chaos, chaos cannot complete its assignment. Neutrality wasn't you ignoring the battle. It was you refusing to fight a war beneath your spiritual rank. And now the very people who tried to provoke you are confused. They don't understand how someone who endured so much maintained such stability. They don't understand how their attacks never penetrated your core. They don't understand how you remained unmoved while they worked overtime to shake you. But this is what they missed. Staying calm wasn't passivity. It was mastery. It was the moment you shifted from reacting to ruling. You weren't being quiet. You were being elevated. Number 11, the pain you carried wasn't punishment. It was encryption. You weren't just hurting. You were being encoded. What felt like suffering was actually a process of spiritual data being written into your soul. Every betrayal, every abandonment, every dark night of the soul was embedding a specific frequency of understanding that you would later unlock with ease. Your wounds were not random events. They were calibrated experiences designed to install spiritual technology inside you. That heartbreak encoded discernment. That loneliness encoded spiritual hearing. That betrayal encoded X-ray intuition. That depression encoded depth and dimensional wisdom. Nothing you survived was wasted. Your trauma became the software your calling required. People think pain weakens you, but in chosen ones, pain becomes architecture. It builds internal structures that can't be shaken. It constructs emotional bandwidth that is supernatural. It forges a level of empathy that can't be faked, bought, or taught. You were never meant to be soft in a shallow way. You were meant to be soft in a penetrating, revelatory, soul-reading way. And softness like that can only be produced through agony. Pain didn't break you, it initiated you. It didn't reduce your value, it activated your purpose. It didn't rob you of innocence. It upgraded your insight so you could navigate the spiritual landscape with precision others don't possess. You weren't punished, you were prepared. Every scar activated a new spiritual instrument. Every loss unlocked a higher perceptual field. Every tear rewired you to carry the weight of the assignments you would later step into. Your calling required you to feel deeply, so that one day, when someone else is standing in the same darkness that almost swallowed you, you would know exactly how to speak to their soul without guessing. You became a guide not because you read something, but because you survived something. And now, the very pain that once felt like your downfall has become the cipher that grants you access to destiny. Your wounds weren't punishment. They were programming. They were preparation. They were prophecy concealed in suffering. Number 12. You were always 2 steps ahead because your spirit receives information before your eyes do. You've moved through life with an awareness that can't be explained by logic or experience. You weren't analyzing, you were knowing. Long before someone showed their true character, their energy had already told you everything. Before a situation went wrong, your spirit had already warned you, shifted you, or made you lose interest. You've spent years thinking you were overthinking, when in reality you were overfeeling. Your intuition was processing what your mind wasn't ready to articulate yet. Chosen ones don't rely on eyesight, because eyesight can be fooled. People can smile while plotting. Opportunities can sparkle while hiding traps. Environments can look safe while being spiritually toxic. But your inner system has never been deceived. You pick up intentions faster than people express them. You sense shifts before they manifest. You feel the truth even when it's buried under layers of performance. This is not paranoia, it's prophetic wiring. It's an internal warning system that activates before your physical senses catch up. You don't guess, you receive. You don't assume, you detect. When someone's energy goes off, you feel the alert in your body. When someone is genuine, you recognize their sincerity before you understand why. This spiritual technology has been with you since childhood, which is why you often felt older than your age, sharper than your peers, and strangely aware of things no one explained to you. Your spirit doesn't just protect you, it guides your steps. It pushes you away from people who aren't meant to walk with you. It closes doors that would have led to destruction. It exposes what others worship. It highlights the truth in the middle of confusion. That's why you always seem ahead, because you're not operating on the timeline everyone else is trapped in. You're operating on revelation, on insight, on unseen downloads. What others learn through consequences, you learn through intuition. What others realize too late, you sense at the beginning. Being 2 steps ahead is not luck, it's alignment. It's the evidence that you were built with spiritual intelligence for an assignment that requires precision, protection, and prophecy. Number 13. Your assignment made you a mirror. And mirrors are hated by those avoiding self-confrontation. Your existence didn't bother people because you were loud, wrong, or disruptive. It bothered them because your energy quietly reflected back everything they were running from. Some people spend their entire lives avoiding the truth about themselves, building identities on denial, ego, and carefully curated illusions. Then you walked in, authentic, intuitive, spiritually alert, and without saying a word, you exposed the cracks in their facade. It wasn't intentional. It was the natural effect of an aligned soul standing in its truth. You became a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They don't soften the edges. They don't adjust the lighting. They don't protect anyone's delusion. Mirrors simply reveal. And for people committed to avoiding self-confrontation, that kind of presence feels like a threat. They felt naked around you, not physically but emotionally and spiritually. Their projections were really attempts to break the mirror so they wouldn't have to face what it revealed. They attacked you not because you were wrong, but because they were not ready to be right with themselves. They misunderstood you because understanding you would have required understanding their own shadows. They gossiped, twisted and resisted because your authenticity interrogated their excuses. Every time you showed strength, it exposed their stagnation. Every time you grew, it highlighted their refusal to evolve. You weren't trying to shame anyone. Your growth simply illuminated their avoidance. Their hostility was a confession. People don't react that strongly to what doesn't touch them. Their discomfort around you wasn't about your personality. It was about their reflection. You became the unexpected truth they never wanted to confront. And the more you aligned with your assignment, the louder that reflection became. A chosen one doesn't need to speak to wake people up. Your presence alone forces clarity. And while they may resent the mirror now, one day they'll realize it was the only honest thing they encountered in a world full of masks. Number 14. You've already done the impossible. You kept your soul intact in a world designed to break it. Your journey is extraordinary, not because you survived, but because you survived without losing yourself. Many people go through hardship and come out hardened, bitter, or emotionally distorted. But you walked through experiences that could have easily twisted your character, and somehow you held on to your compassion, your empathy, your ability to care, and your desire to do right. That is not normal. That is strength that can't be taught, only carried. Keeping your soul intact is a miracle most people will never fully understand. Life tried to turn your heart into stone, but you refused to become cold. Pain tried to make you numb, but you kept feeling. Betrayal tried to train you to distrust everyone, yet you kept the ability to love. Loss tried to convince you that there's no point in hoping, yet you protected your ability to believe anyway. That is not weakness. That is spiritual mastery. You held on to integrity when your circumstances practically begged you to let it go. There were moments where bitterness would have been justified, where revenge would have been easy, where shutting down completely would have been the logical choice. But you didn't surrender to the darkness that surrounded you. You didn't let your environment rewrite your essence. You walked through fire and came out with your humanity intact. That is the hallmark of someone chosen for a bigger purpose. You weren't selected because you were perfect. You were selected because you refused to lose your inner truth even when everything around you tried to snatch it away. You didn't just go through the impossible, you grew through it. You didn't just endure damage, you resisted becoming damaging. You didn't just withstand the storm, you protected the gentle parts of your spirit in weather that should have destroyed them. That's why you're chosen. Not because you avoided the fire, but because the fire refined you instead of consuming you. You came back with your spirit sharper, clearer, and deeper, not shattered. That kind of resilience is rare, sacred, and unstoppable. You didn't just survive life, you preserved the most important part of yourself while doing it. That is the real impossible. Conclusion. You've walked through chapters most people wouldn't have survived, yet you carried something far more impressive than resilience. You carried truth, depth, and spiritual intelligence into every season that tried to erase you. Every hardship, every betrayal, every shift, every silent battle stitched together a version of you that is both rare and necessary. You didn't rise because life was gentle with you. You rose because your assignment demanded that you evolve into someone who could hold the weight of purpose without breaking under it. Everything you've endured has been shaping you into a soul that doesn't just survive adversity, but translates it into wisdom. You became dangerous to darkness because transformation became your natural response, not destruction. You kept growing in environments that benefited from your stagnation. You learned to see clearly in places where everyone else preferred to pretend. You developed discernment that slices through illusion without effort. You mastered emotional discipline in situations designed to provoke you into losing control. You discovered that your pain wasn't random. It was encoded guidance, spiritual technology preparing you for the very people you are meant to lead. You became a mirror, a warning, a lesson, a guide, a revelation, simply by being who you are. Not through force, not through ego, but through authenticity. And the greatest miracle of all is that you preserved your soul through experiences that break most hearts beyond repair. The fact that you still have compassion, faith, intuition, and purpose alive inside you is proof that your calling operates on a level many can't comprehend. So, as this season unfolds, understand this clearly. You didn't come this far by accident. You didn't survive all this to remain small or silent. Everything you've become is the evidence that your assignment is unfolding exactly as it should, and the world is about to witness the version of you that was forged, not damaged, elevated, not erased. If this message spoke to your spirit, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs this word. Your support helps this community grow, and your presence here means more than you know. Keep shining, keep rising, and keep walking in the power that was always yours. God bless you.